Anya, we haven't heard a lot from you since the election. Well, we have on Twitter. Is there any take on that you have that anyone else hasn't offered or that you think was absolutely correct on why Donald Trump scored a landslide victory over Kamala Harris?
I do still think the question mark in terms of the final vote tally is something that I will factor in as a major contributor. The fact that it's possible that 15 million people who voted for Joe Biden didn't vote for either Kamala or Trump this time around. That's a pretty big number. So where all those people went, or if it's statistically possible that all those people could have voted last time and not this time, that's the main question that I have. I wasn't surprised that Trump won. I always thought it was possible, though it just the landslide and the mandate to the Republican Party, which is really now the party of MAGA, is overwhelming. And in my lifetime, I just haven't really seen something that felt that overwhelming. And with everything that happened the last election, the fact that Trump just emerged, and after the attempts on his life, the fact that he won by such a wide margin, and they pushed Kamala so heavily, the media, I think just says that really the Democratic Party is in need of a major overhaul. They've completely missed the mark. It was kind of a fluke that Biden won while Hillary, in between Hillary and Kamala, they're whatever they've been doing is not working in terms of reading the American people. I think the media, the mainstream media, it's like this election should be considered the end of all of that. Those institutions should be put in the dustbin of history. They're not relevant anymore. People don't even care what CNN and these other media outlets have to say. And so I think that's why Trump won. It's just, unless you're on X, probably it was impossible to imagine Trump could win, because every other media outlet made it seem like this close race. But
she's up by 4 in Iowa. There's all these
the Iowa poll. That was
bogus polls.
Right.
It was more bizarre than what happened with Hillary, right?
Yeah, I mean, it raises new question marks about 2020 for me, I gotta say. But I think the number of people who voted in 2020 who didn't show up this time was closer to like 12 million, but that's still a lot of people. And they were all so excited for Joe Biden. It doesn't quite make sense to me. The voting, all the tallies came in late after all the betting houses were going for Trump. It was a COVID election in which Biden campaigned from his basement. The whole thing was weird. And the Kamala campaign, I mean, you talk about the Democratic Party needing a total overhaul, or I would say a hostile takeover. They spent $1 billion on this election, like a full $1 billion. And imagine donating. I mean, imagine being a donor to the Democratic Party, whether you're Reid Hoffman or just some dupe at home who donated, and realizing that they spent $564 million on advertising alone, including $15 million to event production companies, like $1 million to Oprah Winfrey's Harpo Productions, I guess, to get Oprah to speak. They spent all this money on celebrity concerts to get Megan Thee Stallion out there. Who else performed? Megan Thee Stallion, noted role model to young women. And then they spent
Beyonce, Eminem. They trotted Eminem out in Michigan.
Yeah, that was weird. A guy who, earned millions of dollars for a track about gerbil stuffing gets trotted out, and he looked like a hostage. And then they spent 6 figures to build a set for a sex podcast, Call Her Daddy, which was eventually filmed in a hotel room. This is, I was just looking at the various Call Her Daddy podcast episodes. Kamala's down there in the corner next to Meeting My Husband.
Horrible. It's so bad for girls, that podcast.
So what's going on here? What is this, and why did they do this, Anya?
And this was when she was refusing to travel to go and do a 2-hour special with Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
Which probably could have helped. Well, I don't think she would have been able to pull it off. But in theory, if you're a candidate, that I think is the most important interview you can do. Young people turned out in a way that I think surprised people for Trump. But look at, remember in 2020 when they were like so excited about the historic election and how more people voted than ever before. And there was just this groundswell of enthusiasm. Like how did that all just end 4 years later? You'd think that if anything, there would be more. Especially because this is the other main part of, I think, why the Democrats lost is that they were trying to tell people that the economy was good. And their allies in the media were trying to tell people that like Biden's overseeing this miraculous recovery and that the economy is great and that average people just don't have the right to know about the economy. When in reality, you can't lie to people. Everybody still pays. You know, anybody who's buying groceries knows that you can throw any statistic out there about the economy, but when you know what it costs to buy the same groceries 5 years ago versus now, you that's pretty much where people's consideration of the economy begins and ends, because it's just about their pocketbook or bottom line. So they crafted a lie that nobody else believed, and really that's a trend for them now. They mistook the reality that they created through the media and everything that they control for the actual reality of what Americans are living in. And I remember when I was younger, maybe there was more of a question of which celebrities supported which party and candidates. And, you know, it was like edgy to criticize Bush and be a celebrity who was like liberal because of the Iraq war and everything that went on in the early 2000s. But now it's really like not shocking to me when a celebrity endorses the Democratic Party. It's like, we get it. We all know that you guys are friends and you hang out, and that the Hollywood and the music industry, they're part of the liberal establishment. It's not that impressive to me that Taylor Swift or any of those artists endorse Kamala's candidacy, because it's like a big club. And to be a Republican,
they don't stand to lose anything.
To be MAGA, actually, like if you're Sydney Sweeney or any of those celebrities that are like accused of being MAGA, it's much more controversial, and it's like that's
edgy. You're a rebel, and that, you know, that makes you more appealing to young people who have received no material benefit from their government and just feel like they're continually being lied to. And, you know, in addition to the $1 billion, there were just these condescending displays where men were basically being told, you're sexist unless you support your wife in her fight for her bodily autonomy against Donald Trump. And it all backfired. Especially look at the men they brought out, and you'll recognize one of these as someone you had a DM exchange with, Anya.
Not being a girl dad. I love how much smarter she is than all the guys in the room already. I can tell that she's going to be a powerhouse. She is already at 2.5.
My daughter's 22 and a half, is a feminist, incredibly strong, and has really just inspired me in so many ways. I love her.
It's like, wow, I have a daughter. Like, whoa.
And Andy Cohen has a daughter.
Dad of Ella over here.
My vote for Kamala is an investment in my daughter's future.
I agree. I'm right there with you.
When the Dobbs decision came out 2+ years ago, I heard from Kamala right away. And then the next person was Ella. She texted me right away, essentially saying, we need to fight. This is not just an issue for women. This is an issue for men and families.
And she's wearing the fake, like, Tim Walz camouflage hunter trucker hat, like that they completely stole from middle America. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Why is Ben Stiller so stiff and like he was just giving it 0%?
Yeah, none of these people seem like terribly pleased to be there.
It looks like a hostage video, except and Ella Emhoff is the ultimate hostage here. She was actually put on lockdown when she spoke up in November 2023 for Palestinians.
Yeah, but I mean, she did everything she could to try to get Kamala elected too. So
She did. She eventually came through, and obviously was a huge asset for the campaign. I mean, when you get a supermodeling career out of nowhere,
wait, what?
And she is has a major contract with a supermodel agency and is a fashion designer, and they're trotting her out, and she's wearing the camo hat, clearly identifying
supermodel to you, Wyatt.
Who hired her and when? This is real?
Yeah, she's one of those supermodels that also doesn't shave her pits or anything.
Never in my lifetime did I think that we would be having to fight for this and the fight for our own bodies. And I think it's really important for the men to step up and show that they actually support us and they're willing to put things on the line to help us.
About being a girl.
Step up for Ella Emhoff. Doug Emhoff.
I hate this. It's so annoying that women's rights is just defined by this one issue. That's it. It's so bizarre to me. It's like how you had Emma Vigilant crying, saying that this just shows that this country doesn't like women. That's not my experience. I don't find that people are out there hating women. Honestly, I don't find that to be. That's not why people voted for Trump. I think it's
a lot of pro-choice people supported Trump out of disgust.
Yeah. They also lied about Trump's position on abortion constantly. Trump took that issue off the table, I thought, pretty effectively, saying that he wouldn't sign a national abortion ban. And yet they lied repeatedly, saying that that's what he was going to do. I think the lies just didn't work. People heard him. And JD Vance also they know that that issue's done at this point, and that the best they can hope for from their pro-choice side is to keep it on this state level that we already have. So,
the
question is, are the Democrats ever actually going to codify Roe? And I don't think they will, because that's literally the only issue they have. Can you imagine if they took abortion off the table by doing what they promised to do? They would have nothing, because that was their entire campaign. And it's a fear campaign. It's why you got women voting for Kamala genocide in Israel, or in Palestine, even though they were aware of it, because of abortion. I know people who that's why they were still moved to vote for Kamala, even though they oppose her foreign policy and everything else, and they may have likely been Jill Stein voters. People are that brainwashed by that issue. How are the Democrats ever going to actually take it off the table? I don't buy that they will.
Abortion. It's all we hear about. And, we hear nothing now about the post-birth abortions taking place across Gaza, still being administered by the Biden administration. There's video circulating of a newborn baby that was suffocated under rubble in northern Gaza, where Israel's committing genocide. I was going to do a whole segment on this, but we don't have time. But the Blinken, Lloyd Austin deadline for Israel to allow humanitarian aid trucks into northern Gaza is up today. So what did Israel do? They planted bullets on an aid truck and continued ethnically cleansing northern Gaza. Aid organizations across the board, including Cindy McCain, the widow of John McCain from the World Food Program, are saying no aid is getting in. Israel has broken the deadline, and the Biden administration is not going to enforce U.S. law, which mandates that they provide aid to, that they cut off weapons to Israel, because they won't allow U.S. aid in. But that issue is taken off the table for a lot of people by abortion. And clearly Kamala was just catering to that crowd, but she lost pretty much everyone else. And now they're just going to blame everyone for being racist and sexist when there's so many reasons. And she clearly lost Michigan because of this issue. But Andy Cohen also made some racist comments about Palestinians in your direct messages, Anya. He was just in that video.
Yeah, Andy Cohen, the godfather of Bravo TV and some of the most addictive television programming in U.S. history with the Real Housewives franchise. I criticized him because he tweeted out maybe on anniversary of October 7th, something about getting the remaining hostages home in Israel, the women that we need, and how we need to care about women. And I tweeted at him something about saying that he doesn't care about women. His shows that he produced are like some of the most toxic for women. It was all just based around like getting them drunk and having the producers create drama around women and not promoting very good role models for girls. But he responded to me actually privately on DM and said that there are many female like badass women who helped produce The Real Housewives, and more women worked on it than men. So he'd be happy to introduce me to those people. And I responded and said, sure, I'll talk to them if you promise to do like a Real Housewives of Gaza edition and interview the women whose families and husbands have been killed by Israel, because he cares about women so much. And he replied to me again, this time saying that if he did that, Hamas would kill all the women or something ridiculous like that. So
yeah, Hamas just kill women. Who's killing the women in Gaza? It's just a sick,
and the children and the men and everybody and the cats.
And this is a Kamala Harris proxy making those comments.
Yeah. Of course.
And I wouldn't watch the Real Housewives franchise if it weren't for you, but it really is true. It's pretty horrible for women. And he's posing as a feminist along with Doug Emhoff, who has a great history as a defender of women.
Yeah, he's a great defender.
Doug Emhoff, who is also like Kamala's AIPAC handler. He was being put forward as like the ideal husband who's just so fired up about his wife. I think there are so many factors in her defeat. But the idea that she ran this perfect campaign when you can just look at any aspect of it and see why it turned normal people. I mean, I don't want to use the term normal because that's a subjective term, but it turned Americans of so many different backgrounds off.
I think just some people looked at Emma Emhoff at the convention and was like, no, that's not about to be, that family is not about to represent the United States. And it is true when you see, I'm sorry, but when you see like the people do the side by sides of like the Trump family and like her family, and it's like, yeah, I kind of, I see why people would want the classic just family there, because it is about it's like you're representing our country. You're the first family. And Doug is very bizarre. He was not only put forward as the perfect husband, but he would do interviews on CNN and elsewhere about her foreign policy, which is very bizarre. You didn't hear Jill Biden, even though she was actually leading policy for Biden eventually, and seated at G7 meetings and whatnot. You would never see her during a campaign giving a one-on-one interview discussing foreign policy or Israel, and you did see that with Doug Emhoff.
Yeah,
so Handler is correct.
And he was constantly, every time he was asked questions in like podcast interviews, like, where were you when she got the call? He'd always be talking about, I just was in my Soul Cycle class. It was like he was always in Soul Cycle, and you're trying to peel off just a small scintilla of working class male votes from Kamala, but you're always in Soul Cycle.
It's like the joke that Tucker would always make about Adam Kinzinger, like drinking a bottle of wine after Soul Cycle and crying. Like that is Doug Emhoff, but that was what they were trying to make him into.
This is him on Pod Save America. Just, I mean, we got to move on, but like, I won't even play it, but like, this is a Pod Save America tweet. Put Doug Emhoff's Soul Cycle in the Smithsonian. Watch. I mean, and then they're just asking about.
And then in the next sentence, can anyone figure out why we didn't dominate this election cycle?
Yeah, exactly. Apparently this doesn't appeal to people other than yuppies.
I mean, he was doing interviews. He would walk out of Soul Cycle Studios and then do interviews right there with the media and paparazzi. I mean, again, I just think there's so many small reasons why they lost.
It's not a very masculine exercise regimen.
Well, it was like the one, because everything about them felt so phony and scripted, and
It's
I
kind of
always assumed that
psychotic.
was,
It's a kind of psychotic exercise.
but that was probably the one thing that was kind of real. And they're like, well, we gotta base some kind of this, personality that we're building up around Doug. We have to base at least a small part of it in real life. And I guess they picked SoulCycle.
He's an entertainment lawyer. That's arguably worse than an ambulance chaser. Like, entertainment lawyers are some of the worst people. He like slept with the nanny. He's
weird though. I just don't buy it.
Incredibly accused by more live women, actual real live women, of abusing them than Hamas was on October 7th.
Yeah, his ex-wife, didn't she accuse him of physically beating her? So I mean, that's
and like the only thing real he does in the world is SoulCycle and go to meetings with the ADL and like do seminars on fake anti-Semitism hoaxes. And this was going to be the first husband.
Very glad we dodged that bullet.
Okay, so we dodged that bullet.